Welcome to BlackUSA.news morning show. I'm your host, William Honolulu Jr. Join us as we explore the news and opinions that impact our community. We break down how the major stories have a very personal, local, and racial impact. No topic is off limits, but even if the conversation gets rough, we're always going to keep it real. Greetings and salutations, all my people out there in internet land. This is William Honolulu Jr., and I have the privilege, nay, the honor of serving as the host of the BlackUSA.news morning show. Welcome to this Wednesday, February 23rd, 2022, this 23rd day of Black History Month and National Hospitality Worker Appreciation Day. One of the things that we learned very quickly during the pandemic was that the workers in the hospitality industry, as well as our teachers, as well as our retail workers, they were the ones that were keeping our economy afloat. And then we also realized how important hospitality is to most of our economies. I know in Baltimore, the lack of tourism has been devastating. And I know places like Florida, that's one of the reasons that they're struggling, trying to keep everything open, which that's a whole other thing. So for those of you in Florida, sorry. But that's one of the reasons that the hospitality industry is so vital to much of the American economy. And let's be honest, a lot of these workers do not get treated well by some of us. And they don't get paid well. So let's just stop today and appreciate somebody who works in the hospitality industry, whether that's hotels, restaurants, tourism, whatever. Just say thank you. I'm sure they will appreciate it. As always, big shout out to Crazy Horse Morgan, a super producer who keeps us focused and making sure that we're in a position to bring you quality content and making sure that we're bringing you stuff that you all want to know about. It doesn't make sense for us to have a whole show where it's just sitting here, me talking about stuff. Well, I'm not going to pretend that we haven't done that before, but okay, but he is the reason that we don't do it all the time. So a big shout out to him. I couldn't do this without you, bruh, and I am so grateful for your support always. But you all know what time it is. It's time to say thank you to our sponsors. First and foremost, Edible Arrangements. So grateful to them. Let me show you what I got. Remember this, guys? I got this wonderful bouquet. It had three pineapple doves covered in white chocolate. It was amazing. And the rest of the fruit was also, especially those strawberries. It was crazy. So big shout out to Edible Arrangements. If you have an opportunity, want to celebrate, or just want to let somebody know that they're special, make sure that you hit up Edible Arrangements, especially their locations in Govins and Randallstown in Baltimore and their Pittsburgh location. And I got this, you know how I got this one? Through DoorDash. So go ahead and make sure that you get the things that you need to enjoy yourself. Murphy Falcone and Murphy, Judge Murphy has been working to protect the interest of Black people and Black communities my entire adult life. From the bench as a lawyer. So if you have a situation where you find yourself in some civil challenges, you might find yourself being sued or might need to sue somebody. Or if you find that the government is not doing what your community needs it to do and you need some help figuring out how representation and advocacy work in the political space, make sure you give Murphy Falcone and Murphy a call. Like I said, they've been doing this my entire adult life and they can help you. And worst case scenario, they can refer you to somebody. That's always help. Best case scenario, they can take your case and change your life. We are one of the first organizations, one of the first Black media organizations, BlackUSA.news, to stream in the metaverse. And that's all thanks to STEM City USA, Dr. Tyrone Taborn and his staff over there doing an amazing job. And big shout out to them for just celebrating the Black Engineer of the Year awards last week. I think it's like the 37th, 38th, almost 40 years. So big ups to that. And for those of you all in the metaverse, hey, how you doing? If you find yourself in a situation, and today we're talking about community policing, and sometimes you find yourself in a situation where you're the wrong side of law enforcement, and those types of situations, make sure you give Jay Wendell Gordon a call. Jay Wendell Gordon is the warrior lawyer, not just because it rhymes, but because he fights for his customers. And Google him. That's all I can say about him. Google him. There is enough information on the internet that shows you that he fights and wins for his clients. So if you have some criminal issues, make sure you give Jay Wendell Gordon a call. My company is the Grinding Gang, and we help businesses take their operations to the next level. There's a lot of information out there. You read one article that says you should do this thing, and then you read another article and it says you should do the exact opposite. And it's difficult at times to figure out who you should listen to, how to make sense of all of the noise. And that's what we help you do. We help you make sure that the strategic direction that you're headed in makes sense and aligns with your goals, and not just the ones that related to your business, but the ones related to your life. So give come hit us up at our website, www.grindinggang.com. Membership is free, and we're happy to help you. Our newest sponsor, I Am Black Wall Street, a book written by Donnie Glover. It's a great book that looks at Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and some of the other places that are considered Black Wall Streets, and takes a look at how the people got there. There's a lot of scholarship and a lot of research done on what it was like before it was destroyed, and how and how they rebuilt and those types of things. But he takes a deep dive into how people got to Black Wall Street in the first place, and it really does kind of set up at least a template or an operational model for us to use to create some more. Last but definitely not least, Darker Than Blue Grill. Oh my God, like I told you all before, I'm still thinking about getting a hamburger next time, but I appreciate you all's suggestion of that cowboy prime rib. Oh my goodness, I'm still, you know how like when you think about it, you can taste it a little bit. I'm still there. I'm still there. So if you all know something else on the menu, I know I won't be disappointed, whatever it is, but I'm always looking for a favorite. And if you are looking for an opportunity to celebrate or just have some good food, come down to Darker Than Blue Grill, especially while you're hitting town in Baltimore for the CIAA. So yeah, luckily for me, I think today I had a snack before the show, so I'm not all salivating and everything, or when I talk about Darker Than Blue, so I can maintain a level of on-air professionalism, because that's what you all expect here, right? Yesterday was the first day of the CIAA, and so welcome everyone to the city of Baltimore. I was downtown. I heard about some of the people that were doing different things and watching people walk around. So congratulations there, and welcome to our city. Let's see. Oh, Donnie Glover had Bo Khan on this morning, one of the great executive producers, doing big things in Atlanta for Black media, and that was a really great conversation. So if you didn't hear about that, you weren't there, you didn't catch that show this morning, go ahead back and take a look at that. Let's see. Oh, big shout out to Charlie. He's a great young man I met yesterday. I'm going to keep working on Charlie, because I think Charlie has a show in him. I was talking to his dad, and his dad said he is awesome with his Twitch streaming and stuff like that. So let's see if we can get some more talent up here on BlackUSA.news. And place that Charlie works, Giovanna's Italian Kitchen on Harford Road in Parkville, Maryland. Oh, the food was amazing. Telling you this morning, that's what a part of my snack was. I had a little bit of that left over from yesterday, and that was the reason that I'm not salivating on this morning. So big shout out to them. Big shout out to Charlie. And today, well, actually, let me talk about. No, let's just jump into it. On Monday, we talked about mental health, the provision of mental health in the context of the Baltimore Consent Decree. For those of you all who don't know, the Baltimore Consent Decree is an order by a judge that Baltimore City, the police department, entered into with the Department of Justice and some other agencies because there were some very serious findings against the Baltimore City Police Department. And so the consent decree came down, and in my opinion, on paper, it is written well. It is very progressive in its thinking. And that's one of the reasons we started with the provision of mental health on Monday, because that's one of the things that I don't necessarily see a lot of when we have these types of conversations. So I wanted to make sure that we started the context with that. Another part of the consent decree is this emphasis on community policing. Now, community policing is one of those terms that has been used a lot to describe a lot of different things, and some of them don't fall within the realm of what is considered, by professionals as community policing, and more along the other types of supportive services. So we have members of the the Baltimore Consent Decree Monitoring Task Force today. We have with us, as always, Wanda Watts. Whenever we talk about things consent decree and community, here's Wanda. Hey, Wanda, how you doing? We also have Chuck
I'm
Ramsey.
doing great, thank you.
Cool. We have Chuck Ramsey, and we also have Seth Rosenthal. So how are you all doing today? Everybody
Morning.
okay?
Good morning.
Cool. So, let's start off in a very fundamental way, because I want to make sure that everybody is on the same page as we continue the conversation. When we're talking about community policing, when we're using that word to describe these activities or the things that you all are focused on, what are we actually talking about in community policing? Who wants to take that?
Well, I'll take it first.
Thanks, Jeff.
As you move around the country, different police departments, you get different definitions. But basically, what it is just describing how police services are delivered. They're delivered in partnership with the community and other stakeholders. Part of community policing involves community engagement, because you can't do that if you don't build trust and legitimacy within communities. Often, as you well know, very, very strained, particularly in communities of color. A lot of work has to be done to really gain that trust so that people will be willing to work with you. Because over the years, and my first exposure to community policing was when I was a member of the Chicago Police Department back in the early 90s, and I was charged with the responsibility for developing a community policing model for the Chicago Police Department, which is a huge organization, second only to New York City Police Department. Very traditional, very set in ways, very difficult to implement anything new. And it took some time to get it off the ground, but we were able to do it. It does start not only with training of your officers, because it is a different mentality that's needed, but building that trust, building the legitimacy, actually reaching out and engaging the community, again, residential as well as business community, other stakeholders, getting everybody involved. Monday, you had a discussion around mental health, for an example, getting other agencies within city government involved, because to deal effectively with crime, it really does take a holistic, comprehensive approach to deal with. It's not just about policing. And that's where community policing comes in. It really pulls all those elements together to be effective in having some short and long-term solutions to dealing with crime.
I appreciate that. You know what I realized? That I got so excited about the topic, I forgot to have you all introduce yourself. That was really that. Again, this is what happens when there's a topic that you're passionate about. It's like, oh, let's just jump in and start talking to Chuck. Tell our audience a little bit about yourself, so they understand the credentials that from which you speak and the experience.
Well, thank you. My background is in policing. I'm a native Chicagoan, so I started my policing career in the Chicago Police Department when I was an 18-year-old police cadet. In fact, that was 1968. So that was way before a lot of the folks listening were born. But I spent 30 years as a member of the Chicago Police Department. I left in 1998 to become police chief in Washington, D.C., where I served for nearly 9 years. I did retire very briefly, and then I got a call from Michael Nutter, who had just won the primary in Philadelphia. And, of course, Philly's a heavily Democratic city. Winning the primary is pretty much the same as winning the general election. So he already started putting together his cabinet, and he asked if I'd be his police commissioner. And I was anxious to get back into it. So I said yes, and I spent 8 years as police commissioner in Philly. In 2015, I had the honor of serving as co-chair of President Obama's task force on 21st century policing. And we spent a lot of time talking about topics like building trust and legitimacy, use of technology, social media, all those kinds of things in that particular document that we presented to the President of the United States. Currently, I am a member of the Baltimore monitoring team, and I also serve as chair of Governor Tom Wolf here in Pennsylvania, his Commission on Crime and Delinquency. So I'm still pretty active, even though I'm retired from active law enforcement service.
You know what's really funny? I love all you people who claim to be retired, and then you start running off what you do on a regular basis, and it's like, I don't do that now.
Yeah, I've got to learn the definition of retirement. My definition really doesn't fit, I don't think. But you know,
I don't think that's what they meant when they said retirement. Seth, do us a favor and tell us who you are and how you came to the team.
Sure. Seth Rosenthal. I am, along with Chuck, a deputy monitor of the consent decree monitoring team, and I've been a lawyer for about 30 years with a background in civil rights and criminal justice. I spent a decent chunk of time at the Civil Rights Division in the Justice Department, which is the plaintiff in the lawsuit that led to the consent decree. And a good bit of that time I spent prosecuting police misconduct. Since I've been in private practice, I've kept my foot in civil rights and criminal justice reform. I'm working on the consent decree monitoring team here. I was a technical consultant to the District of Columbia's Police Reform Commission last year, and bring my years of experience in both civil rights enforcement and criminal justice work, including criminal defense, to the monitoring team's efforts.
Oh, cool. Big shout out to, we got two of the other show hosts. This is how you all know you all are important. I got two other show hosts in the comments saying good morning, making sure we know that they're here. Dave from Shared Space and Tasmir from the Blackout. And the Blackout is having its pitch competition this weekend. So I apologize for interrupting you all with a brief commercial, but we do shameless self-promotion here because otherwise who's going to tell our story? We probably don't have to introduce Wanda to our viewers, especially those in Baltimore, but we're going to do it anyway because it's just polite. Wanda, tell the people again how you came to the task force. The team. Wanda, can you hear me? I think I might be glitching with her. I think her she's muted.
Yes, I think my internet is going in and out.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, well, we can hear you well. We can hear you well. So let's go ahead and I can hear you now. So tell them
yes, my internet is going in and out. It's intermittent.
Okay, I was saying tell them that you're not
tell them about myself.
Yeah, we go. There it is. Yes. Hello? Okay, it looks like we're having some challenges.
I'm here.
Oh, yeah, okay. So tell them about yourself.
Xfinity and I are having a problem.
Who's having a problem?
I'm the lead community liaison with the consent decree.
And okay. And one of the things though is even though she can't tell her story right now, one of the things that is for me really reassuring about the monitoring team is the fact that Wanda is on it, primarily because Wanda is not only a community advocate and has been known for that type of activity. Wanda is also somebody who will remind you, not just go along to get along. And so when I saw that she was part of the consent decree task for monitoring team, I knew we were in good hands, and at least we would be kept informed. One of the other reasons that it's great to have Wanda on there is that Wanda is from Baltimore. There are a lot of times where, we rely on people who are from outside of the city or outside of the Oregon or the area to come in and tell us what we need to do. But it's always great to have somebody internally who actually knows what it's like to be from here. So I just want to shout that out. So Give us a sense of any of you. Give us a sense of what has been happening in the progress toward community policing under the consent decree.
Well, again, I'll jump in on that. When we started work on the consent decree, one of the first things we had to do was take a look at the policies that were in existence and update policies. Then we had to look at training. We had to develop new training curriculum, and community policing was a part of that. Last year, the department did put on their community policing training for veteran officers. They did train the entire department. There may be a couple people who are out sick or something like that need to get caught up, but for the most part, they have successfully completed the training, and it was good training, it was quality training. I mean, many of us observed the training that was taking place. We were able to make comments. Of course, we were able to do that throughout the process with the development of the curriculum. And again, remember, it's not just a monitoring team. The Department of Justice is part of that process as well. And so they also had input into that. Training curriculum was sent out for review. Community members could comment, things of that nature. So it's moving in the right direction. Again, I think it's important to note here that, change does not happen overnight, like with a flick of a switch. I mean, it takes some time, but now we're in a phase where we can actually start to assess. We can actually start to take a look at what they're doing and how they're doing it to make sure that, and you mentioned it earlier in your comments, reading the consent decree on paper, looks very good, very progressive, innovative. The key is implementation. Any document can look good when you're just reading it. It's implementing is the key. And that's where we're at now as a monitoring team, not just in community policing, but various other aspects of the consent decree, taking a look at what's actually taking place. And we go back and we take a look at issues to make sure that officers are in compliance and not bringing it to the attention of the department so they can take the appropriate action. Seth, I don't know if you want to jump in and add anything to that.
Yeah, let me just add, in addition to the training that was done, the police department put together a community policing plan that was required by the consent decree. And actually the training drew on the community policing plan because part of what the community policing plan calls for is the development of neighborhood or micro policing plans for all the different unique neighborhoods in Baltimore. Obviously, no two neighborhoods in Baltimore, no two neighborhoods in every city are alike, right? And that process is now being rolled out. So there are pilot programs being developed in both Brooklyn and Curtis Bay neighborhoods in South Baltimore and the Fayette Street Outreach neighborhood in West Baltimore. Those micro or neighborhood policing plans are being developed in coordination with community leaders. The idea is that for community leaders and community residents to say, look, these are the issues of crime and disorder that we have in our communities. What can we do with you, the police department, to try to solve these problems on the front end, to reduce crime and disorder? And to make sure that you, the police, are out in the neighborhoods, present, and addressing these problems on the front end. So that's the idea behind the community policing plan, and specifically behind these neighborhood policing plans that are starting to be developed by the police department in coordination with members of the different communities in which they're going to be used.
So I want to ask, when we talk about community policing, there is even the language that I've looked at and some of the conversations that I've had with people about it. It still takes on this kind of flavor of an occupying force. We're coming in there to and again, my word's not what it says. I'm speaking hyperbolically. It is still the police coming into the community. How much time or attention has been given to trying to recruit more police from out of the communities they serve?
Well, a great deal of time is spent trying to improve recruitment, trying to get residents of the city to actually join policing. You mentioned, police being viewed as an occupying force. And unfortunately, that's a reality, not only in Baltimore, but in many cities. And part of what community policing is designed to do is to change that perception. police can come into a neighborhood, saturate it, pretty much shut down any criminal activity, but you can't sustain it. Only the neighbors, only the neighborhood, the residents can sustain any progress long term. And that's why with community policing, it really does take a partnership, collaboration. It's not just on police. People, have to take control of their own neighborhoods as well. And that's why it's so important, I think, that as we go into this, we realize that people just can't afford to just sit back and let someone else do it. I mean, everyone has a responsibility within their neighborhood of doing what they can, and then police can pull back. But even when they do need to be in there to deal with things, it's how you treat people. It's the respect you give. It's not coming in with the hammer, if you will. It's really working in collaboration and partnership with people.
So one of the things that and one of the things I just want to check in on and make sure that we are clear on is that you mentioned that part of the thing with community policing is changing the perception of the police being occupying force. What I'm suggesting is not changing the perception of the police being occupying force, making the police part of the community by hiring more people specifically from that community.
No,
I thought of one of the.
I wasn't clear.
Okay. But one of the things that I appreciated about the experience that you described of your career was that you were a Chicagoan who joined the Chicago police force, not from the surrounding suburbs, or
right.
you flew in. And that type of connection, at least the way that I see it, and my family members that are in law enforcement, there is a difference when I live there. This is my home. It is not I am coming to police the community. It is I live here and these are my people and we're working together. And that's why I was asking, is there a very specific, is it very deliberate? Is there a very deliberate idea or plan to get people out of the community into law enforcement?
Yes, it is. And that's all part of recruitment and hiring strategies that the department is also working on. How do we get people interested? And you mentioned, my situation, for an example. Well, I mentioned that I started as a cadet in 1968. You may not remember the 60s. You may not even been born in the 60s. But that was a very turbulent time in American history. I mean, the actual civil rights movement with Dr. and others was part of that. The Vietnam War tore the country apart. I mean, you had all these things going on. The most popular thing I could choose to do was not be a police officer as a young black kid that grew up on the south side of Chicago in one of the most challenged neighborhoods in the city of Chicago called Inglewood, which was known even back then as being a very challenged neighborhood. But I wanted to make a difference, and I actually, felt an obligation to try to do something.
Right.
Because again, I was exposed to violence. I was 14 when I saw my first homicide, when my brother's best friend was murdered for refusing to join a street gang. And so those are the kinds of things that really, instead of waiting for someone else to do it, I felt an obligation to do it myself, or at least be a part of it. And I hope that others here in Baltimoreans feel the same way. I mean, you may not be thinking about it now. You may think of a different career, because I didn't grow up wanting to be a police officer. It wasn't until I joined as a cadet that I really realized that was really what I needed to be doing. And I would hope that others give it a chance. That's how change occurs. It occurs from people getting off the sidelines and being a part of it. And this is a special time in Baltimore because change is taking place, and it's an opportunity to be a part of it.
Okay. The other part, so I appreciate that. We have I want to make sure I cover all the stuff that I wanted to cover before we get on. One of the things about community policing that I saw in some of the stuff with some of the stuff that you all are doing is your relationship with nonprofits and other community supports that are already in existence, because a lot of the turbulence that we hear about in the community, once it makes it to the police or to the news, that is even the extreme of what's already happening in the community. There are people and organizations that are working to remediate a lot of these things that are happening in the community. And I appreciated the fact that, again, on paper, there's a lot of direction toward collaboration, and wanted you all to talk a little bit more about how that community collaboration with these organizations works to lead to the lower crime outcomes that you all are looking for.
Again, Seth, I don't know if you want to, okay, if I continue on here, but one of the things that I think is very important whenever you get started putting together a community policing plan is you have to take inventory of what's out there. You know, and there are a lot of organizations and people that are out there doing very good things in communities, but sometimes, you know, as a city, as a whole, as a police department, you know what some of them are doing, but you may not know all the different resources that are out there in the community that you could tap into and form these collaborations to be effective, you know. And so that's one of the very first things you have to do is take inventory of what's out there and then start the process of building relationships and collaboration with those particular entities so that, you know, again, it's that holistic, comprehensive approach that has to be taken in order to be effective in dealing it. So you need to leverage that resource that's already out there in order to be effective. So I think that's a big part of it. And again, my hat's off to those organizations that have been operating, many of them on a shoestring for years and years and years. But they still
some of them without any shoes.
Without any shoes, that have made a difference out there in the community. And hopefully through this collaboration, they can be strengthened so they can do even more.
Yeah, and our understanding is that the mayor's office actually, you know, has a stake in this as well. So, you know, the mayor's office has, you know, an office of public safety and engagement. And actually, Ms. Wanda's predecessor, Shantae Jackson, is the head of that office. And, you know, her principal task is to ensure that the police department and the mayor's office is developing exactly the types of relationships that you, William, and Chuck are talking about, so that, you know, police and community, in fact, are working together to solve crime and disorder problems.
So one big shout out to Shantae. Big shout out. Great. She does great work. You mentioned Chap had a question, and one of the things that happens a lot in Baltimore is that there are a lot of people who come in and are going to save us. There was a period of time where there were more people there were almost as many people in leadership who were from New York than there were who are from Baltimore. And so one of the things that I know is that a lot of our residents get very skittish or concerned when there are people who are not from here who are coming to help here. So tell us what brings you here. Is this just a good job? Because, you know, there's some projects I jump on and it's because I'm interested in the topic. I don't actually care a lot about it necessarily, but I am here because I am a technical expert and I can help. So what brings you all to the team?
Well, I can speak for myself. The issue of police reform is what brought me in. I mentioned earlier that I had the honor of co-chairing President Obama's task force on 21st century policing, which did focus on police reform. And once that task force completed its initial task of providing a report and a kind of a framework for change, we knew there was a lot of work that needed to be done. And I was at a point in my career where I was going to quote unquote retire in terms of active service. But I knew I had more to contribute. So working with other cities, other police departments to really help them through this whole reform effort is why I got involved. And of course, Baltimore, right down the road from Philly. And I spent time, we lived in Washington, D.C. for a period of time. So I followed a lot of what went on in Baltimore for a period of time. In fact, when I was the chief in D.C., I used to look at Baltimore because the demographics were very similar in a lot of ways to see what was going on in Baltimore and how they were addressing it versus how I need to be addressing it in Washington. So I felt a connection there. But police reform is really what brought me to even dealing with monitorship to begin with.
And before I talk about sort of what brings me to doing this work, which is similar to Chuck, a lifelong interest or a career-long interest in police reform, let me talk about our ties to Baltimore, because it is not as if our team has zero ties to Baltimore, right? Our lead monitor, who is my law partner, Ken Thompson, who was on your show on Monday, you know, has been a lifelong resident of Baltimore now for over 70 years. He's the CEO of our team. He runs the show. We have a community engagement team now run by Miss Wanda and Miller Roberts, also Baltimorean, and we have community liaisons in each of the 9 police districts who are members of the monitoring team and get compensated by the monitoring team. They're also obviously all Baltimoreans. We have done one and are doing a second survey of community residents about their attitudes towards Baltimore police and community policing. And our partner in that effort is the Institute for Urban Research at Morgan State University. And so we're active. And I was on the phone with Morgan for an hour yesterday talking about the community survey that's underway. We also have done and will do a second survey of people who were recently arrested, just arrested, and are locked up at central booking. And although the research is being headed by an outfit from the University of Toronto, they're doing it in partnership with a local community organization, the Rose Street Community Center.
Big up Rose Street, yeah,
in East Baltimore. So I don't want to suggest by this conversation that we don't have Baltimore ties, because we do, and we, even though Chuck and I are outsiders, so to speak, recognize the importance of being grounded in the community here. I myself, I live in DC, so I'm just up the road. I've lived in DC for 30 years. And I have an interest in police reform similar to Chuck's. As I mentioned at the outset, I've been a lifelong civil rights lawyer, and much of the work I've done has been around police reform. And so that's what got me involved in this effort, and approaching Ken about, hey, like, this is something that the two of us might want to do together. And so we put together a team to do it. And as it turns out, our team actually was joined at the end of the process because of the city's insistence, and because of the Department of Justice's insistence, and because of the judge's insistence on merging Chuck's team and our team. And so at least in the party's view and in the judge's view, they've got the best of both worlds.
Cool. And again, I appreciate it. And Seth, thank you very much for kind of laying out the structure of the organization so that we have a sense of all of the ties that is for the community. Wanda, are you able to hear me?
Hi. My internet is going in and out intermittently. Xfinity and I are having a little problem here.
Okay. So it sounds like Wanda is connectivity is off. Yeah, we can't hear you. We can't hear you, Wanda. Okay. Try to get her back on. Let's see. There we go. Are you with us, Wanda?
Okay.
Okay, maybe not.
It's on my end.
Big shot. Oh, okay. Okay, I got you. There's something happening on your end. I get that. Seth, big shout out to Morgan State University, by the way. Go Bears, and also to Rose Street. Two really good programs. Morgan, one of the jewels of the HBCU ecosystem. So it's really good to know that you all are partnering with those organizations. So let's talk about how community becomes involved in community policing. You talked about a lot of the liaisons that you all have that are in the community, but I live in Northeast Baltimore. What can I do to get involved in, or does community policing not really affect me because I live in Northeast Baltimore?
Seems like I keep hogging it up there, Seth. I don't know if you want to chime in.
I defer to your wisdom, Chuck.
Well, every police district is responsible for creating within that community plan that Seth had laid out earlier that came from the department. But every district has its own piece of it, right? And so that particular district that covers the area where you live, they have their own community engagement strategy. The liaisons, we have liaisons for every district as well. And so there are meetings that take place. A lot of them have been virtual in light of COVID and so forth. but now I guess it's time to start getting back, moving toward in-person meetings. But there are ways in which, and should be able to see it on the website, when these meetings are taking place, to make those kinds of contacts, to find out what's going on in your particular neighborhood and what you can do in your neighborhood to help deal with many of the issues. But it depends. Every neighborhood is different, as we said earlier. So every police district is doing something that's slightly different, but it all revolves around engagement, getting involved, the different organizations that exist within your neighborhood, leveraging their resources, and so forth.
Yeah, and look, one of the things that, and let's again be clear about the distinction between us as the monitoring team and the police department. Our goal is to try to move the police department towards reform and to monitor them, to evaluate them, to ensure that that's the direction they're taking. We are not part of the police department. Our boss is, Judge James K. Berdar, right? Federal District Court judge here in Baltimore. And so we are independent from and have to be independent from the police department. But one of the things the police department is supposed to do, under the consent decree, in order to move forward with or achieve the community policing objectives, is to do exactly what Chuck said, and that is to make known to community residents the opportunities for those residents to inform policing strategy. That is part of what community policing is all about. And these neighborhood policing plans that I mentioned at the outset, well, it looks like we all got cut off now. But these neighborhood policing plans that I mentioned at the outset are part of what the police department is supposed to be doing to engage community members in community policing efforts.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. We lost William.
Yeah, William froze up on us too for a minute.
Okay, here he comes.
Okay. I have no idea what happened just now. That was crazy. I think the internet all around the area is going crazy. It was wild, and I was like, where did everyone go? Like they're all gone. So clearly the improvements in our technology here did not improve the internet. So yeah, we're just gonna have to keep relying on the technology. I'm so sorry. I am back.
Good to see you.
Good to be seen. So where were we when I left? I can't remember where we were. I remember shouting out Morgan and Wall Street.
I think Seth made it, and I don't know if you were able to hear, because he made a very, very important point. And that is that, we are not part of the police department. So our job is to see to it that the police department is doing the things that are required in the consent decree, not do it ourselves. Our level of engagement is to keep people informed as to what's going on and the progress being made. But we are not part of the police department. We're not part of the city. We actually work for the courts to make sure that everything is being done in terms of implementing those provisions within the consent decree. Part of that is, of course, community policing, but there are a lot of other aspects of the consent decree that we need to be monitoring and make sure that they come into compliance.
Right. And so I'll just add to that our community liaisons, therefore, are not representatives of the Baltimore Police Department. They're representatives of the monitoring team who work for Judge Berdar, right? To make sure that the police are doing what they're doing. So the function of our community liaisons is A, to do exactly what Chuck said, which is to inform community on a localized basis what's happening under the consent decree, and B, to talk to community members and learn, are you having problems with the police? If so, tell us about it. Are you seeing good things from the police? And if so, tell us about that too. And then report that back to us so that we can tell Judge Berdar about it, right? So that's the function of our community liaison program. Now, the police department has a separate community liaison program, and that liaison program should be doing, and we are monitoring whether it is doing and will continue to do exactly what you talked about before, William, which is to make sure that the police department is actually partnering with members of communities so that members of communities are informing police strategy. They're letting police know what the problems are in their particular community, and they're working with the police hand in hand to try to resolve those problems. So not police as an occupying force, which is what you talked about before, but rather police as partners in public safety. That's what community policing is.
And honestly, one of the things that, in my view of, that happy fantasy space of community policing, it becomes less about the police community. It becomes less about policing the community. It becomes more about the police becoming the community, not just we show up here for work. And that's why I'm a really big advocate for some of the older programs that when, lower rates for mortgages and incentives to have police officers and the like to move into the communities that they serve. But I do recognize that there was some conversation about the difficulty of having people live in the communities that they serve. But again, for me, that's part of the issue. It still makes it so that if you have difficulty living here, then maybe if everybody has difficulty living here, then maybe the hiring criteria, to your point, the way we recruit and things like that may not be most effective. And figuring out how do we identify the people who have these types of connections to the community and making sure that they're not just brought into the process for monitoring, but even after you all are gone. Because the reality is, and we said this on Monday, there were the mayor, president of the city council, the comptroller, chief of police, none of them were in the van with Freddie Gray. They weren't there. And most of, these things happen at the ground level. Right. We are really talking about, how it, and I really appreciate the emphasis on training and how that training is a regular part of. It's not just check the box. Where I went here, I did, 5 hours of training. Oh, I'm so tired. And now I don't have to think about this until next year. Like people who only get certified in CPR once a year, I don't want you there when I have an issue. Because unless it's like the day after, I want somebody who has been doing this regularly. So again, I am grateful for you all for being here. If someone wants to get involved, I know they can go to the monitoring team's website. How else can they get involved? I want to make sure we keep covering this.
So Wanda, why don't we throw this one to you if you're able to speak to us without getting chopped up. All right.
Are you able to hear me now?
We can hear you.
Okay. One of the things that you mentioned our website, and our website is really interactive because if you go to bpdmonitor.com, I don't have a way to put that out on the screen.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I can do it.
bpdmonitor.com. All of our policies and procedures. We'll have to do this again.
Yeah, it's okay. bpdmonitor.com, right? Yeah, so let me put that out here.
That's it.
Is it? Oh, no, I absolutely did not spell that right. I'm going to undo that.
That is it.
Okay. Oh, I did spell it right. Oh, yeah.
MONI.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry. Let me try that again. This is actually not as easy as like. I'm gonna have to talk to Horse about changing our studio back. I gotta be honest. I miss clicking the mouse. I really do. All this touchscreen stuff, not having a great time with it. Gotta be honest. Okay. So what I want to do is we have about 10 minutes left.
Changed since Monday?
Huh? Yeah, we did change Monday. On Tuesday we unveiled the new thing, and I gotta be honest. I think I might want to go back. I gotta be honest.
Hey, William, can I add just a couple more things?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So, in addition to the website, we're on social media. We have a Facebook page, we have an Instagram account, we have a Twitter account. We are posting on those regularly. We also have an email address, info@bpdmonitor.com, where people can send us questions, express concerns, weigh in on BPD policies or practices. Those types of things. We also have a phone number, which I don't have handy, but it's on our website. So those are all different ways in which folks can reach out to us.
All right, so let's put that here. info@bpdmonitor.com.
Yes.
All right, cool. So let's talk about some of the takeaways. What are the next steps in community policing? What can we expect to see? Or is a lot of this stuff that we as general citizens won't see?
Go ahead, Chuck.
Well, I think, one thing you should start seeing is implementation of it.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, implementation of plans. And actually, hopefully, you start seeing an impact on many of those chronic crime and disorder issues that plague many of our neighborhoods, not just from the police activity, but from the partnerships and collaboration. As Seth mentioned earlier, some of the neighborhood policing pilot programs that are taking place now, where you actually see city services coming in. You also correct many of those conditions that help to sustain crime and disorder, abandoned housing and vacant lots with overgrown weeds and trash and all that sort of thing that takes place. Again, these things don't happen overnight, but people should start seeing at some point in time a change and a difference. But one of the things that I think is going to be very important, because we talked about training and all those kinds of things. Part of our job is accountability too, making sure that people, police officers, actually perform in a manner that's consistent with the consent decree. And so that's part of what our job is as we start to assess their progress and what's actually going on within the department. So I think all those things combined, I think, are something that hopefully people start to see. But again, nothing takes the place of being involved. You see it if you're involved in it. If you're just sitting back waiting for something to happen and you're not being involved, then you're not likely to see it, as readily as you would be if you actually took part. And that's what we encourage people to do. Take part in what's taking place. As your neighborhood, you're a stakeholder.
Mm-hmm.
You have an equal responsibility, same as everybody else, to improve some of the things that take place in that neighborhood.
One of the objectives of the community policing plan, getting down to brass tacks, is for officers to spend 40% of their time on proactive community policing activities and 60% responding to calls for service. Right now, officers spend almost 100% of their time running from call to call, right? So they have very little time to walk the beat, going from business to business or home to home, out on the street being seen, right? They're running from call to call. The idea behind community policing is to put them out in the community. And part of that, it's all kind of a seamless web, means diverting certain 911 calls from the police to behavioral health professionals, right? So they reduce their burden because they're the ones who are often called on. There are other types of calls that always go to 911 and require a police response now, but that ultimately maybe shouldn't require a police response, should require a response from some other city agency, right? So that officers are freed up to actually engage in the kind of proactive community policing that we're talking about. Now, look, it's going to be very difficult, giving staffing shortages on the police force right now to achieve that 40-60 goal and to move from what's pretty much a 95-5 dynamic now to a 40-60 dynamic. But that's the objective, is to get officers out there working with community members to solve these problems. And I know that, Commissioner Harrison and his command staff are working to figure out ways to do that. Just to give you some concrete examples, for computer-aided dispatch or CAD codes, officers have CAD codes for all the calls or all the work that they do, right? There are now different CAD codes for actually community policing activities. There weren't before. Officers are now going to be recognized in their performance evaluations for engaging in community policing activities, whereas before they weren't. So there are things that the department is trying to do institutionally to make sure that community policing is a reality and that those objectives, those community policing objectives in the consent decree are achieved.
Okay, so what do we say? Because there's a lot of progress that you all are making, and I openly acknowledge that. But what I also hear people saying is this sounds like the other progress that we had before, when every time somebody has said this, that there are plans and there's training, like all of the words sound very, very familiar from what we've heard before. And we've heard about police reform and building trust with the communities. We've had, Lord knows how many police commissioners all talk about during their interviews and things like that, how they're going to be different and they're going to engage the community and blah, 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 blah. And so based on my professional analysis, I can see that this looks different at least. But I'm also a lawyer, and I've worked in government and da da da. So it looks different to me. What do we talk to people on the ground when they say they just sound like every other person or every other group or everybody who's come in to save us again? Right.
I'll say first that, and we've emphasized this from the beginning, as has Judge Berdar, turning around an ocean liner, fixing what was unquestionably a broken police department doesn't happen overnight. And yes, we've been at it for 4 years now, since February of 2018. We've made a lot of progress, but there's still a long way to go. Look, our goal is to work ourselves out of a job, and we want to work ourselves out of a job as quickly as we can. And we're seeing good things happening, but you're exactly right. Where is the proof that things are happening? And so we, as a monitoring team, and Judge Berdar in his role as overseeing the consent decree, are moving markedly now from providing technical assistance to the police department, using our background and expertise to help them rewrite policies, deliver high quality training, craft these plans, to actually, evaluating whether on the street, the reforms that have been drawn up, the policies that have been revised, the training that's been done is having a meaningful impact. And so, for instance, just last week, we produced our very first comprehensive assessment of BPD's training function. We also produced it on our website. We also produced our very first comprehensive assessment of BPD's performance in the transportation of persons in custody arena. Important, obviously, because what happened with Freddie Gray grew out of, arguably deficiencies in transport.
That was incredibly kind and very loyally of you. I appreciate it.
It was. I'm trying to be diplomatic here. So anyway, look, no question, based on our own hard look, they are making progress in that realm. Transport vehicles are, generally speaking, properly outfitted with the equipment they need to be outfitted with, which wasn't always the case before. And officers are, generally speaking, not all the time, but generally speaking, doing what they need to do to ensure prisoner safety during transport, right? They haven't reached compliance yet. They're not quite there, but they've made substantial progress. And so I commend those reports to you. But it's that kind of work that we will be doing in the coming year and more to ensure that these foundational reforms that have now been implemented are actually having an impact on the street.
Okay. Well, guys, I really, really appreciate you all, not just for showing up on the show today, but for the work that you all are doing. I am hopeful that this will really lead to significant reforms and improvement, not just in the relationship between the police and the community, but making the police part of the community. I think that is possible. And I don't believe in a lot of fantasies, fairy tales, but that's what I'm going to try to sleep with. Try to make that part of my dream, I should say. So I'm looking forward to the next time that we have an opportunity to have you guys on to go deeper into the consent decree and how it works and the progress at the time. I'll circle back with Wanda to get you all rescheduled to be back on here so we can find out what's happening. Thank you all.
Thank you, William. Appreciate you having us.
Appreciate it.
No problem. And Wanda, we're gonna have you on soon because I know you got a lot to say because you're from Baltimore and you know how the community works. So we're gonna talk to you again later. All right. Didn't we do it again? Didn't we do it again? We got to the end of another amazing show. Understanding community policing is vitally important to the future, especially places like Baltimore, but also doing it right in Baltimore serves as a model for the rest of the nation. And then if we can get that done, maybe there's more improvement for Black people that can happen. Oh my God. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, I will see you tomorrow. We'll be Black then.